this. When you was breaking down, like, do you think some of the poets who do undercharge themselves, it's just the fact they just don't know the business portion of it? Or the ones, let me ask two-part question. The other part is, do you think the ones who say they're a professional poet, do you know that they don't know that they disrespecting the art?
I think it's both, right? I think it's both. I think that a lot of poets don't understand the business portion of it, and I will throw myself in there to be included when I first started. Right?
There's no handbook for it.
Yeah.
You gotta figure this shit out.
Absolutely.
Or you gotta have a mentor or somebody give you alley-oop.
Yeah, because the biggest thing is, how do you make these things profitable, right? The first thing a lot of poets fall for, and I wouldn't even say fall for, because there's some value to it, is exposure, right? The beginning of it is like, you know what, there's no budget, but you're gonna have this crowd, and you can sell your CDs, and you can do, all of these things, and so there is that aspect of it. I think for me, as I started going to these events, started going to these shows, and I saw the number of people that were there, what they were charging, and just do simple math. Secondly, I saw the other talents that were there. They got no problem paying a musician. They got no problem paying a vocalist. They got no problem paying a comedian. But like from a poetry standpoint, it's like, hey man, you know what I mean? You get the exposure. I got $25 I can give you, or whatever the case may be, right? And it's like, and it's undervaluing yourself. It's undervaluing the impact of the art form. Again, right? You take Brandon Lee and AGT. He's going against dancers. He's going against amazing vocalists. He's going against all of these very talented people, and he was able to move enough people in America to vote him number one and win $1 million, right? I think that a lot of times we don't understand the impact of our words, the impact that poetry can have, not just from an entertainment perspective, but just in a lot of different other avenues. And so, yeah, man, I know that there have been some poets before who I know. That Masterpiece out of Dallas had done a Poets University. The Queen Sheba was doing, and Georgia was doing master classes on trying to help poets and understand the business side of it. I know Brandon Alexander Williams, Real Talk, when he was doing his book, there's something he's working on just to try to help poets through that process. So yeah, I think some of it is ignorance, right? We just don't understand the financial portion of it, and there's a desire to perform. There's a desire to get your art form out there. There's a desire to be able to have that impact, and sometimes that's circumvented when we don't, understand the business aspect of it. And then, like I said, there's some poets that, don't care, right? They're just like, I'll do it for free, or I'll do it for the 25, or whatever the case may be, for whatever their reasons are. I don't really know. So I think it's a combination of both.
And I also feel like the promoters just don't, like you said earlier, the promoters don't know either. If you don't know, you don't know.
But it's up to us, to force them to know, right?
Keep the standard.
Yeah, I mean, it's up to us to.
Is it up to us to mentor people so they know? Or is it up to us to, like, if you don't know, you don't know?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
And again, right, that goes back to, Poet University. It goes back to the master class that Queen Sheba and Georgia and me were looking to do, right? There are people who have made efforts to do that, right? To say, hey, let me show you how I did it. Let me show you there are certain things you should do. There are people who have come to me and who have said, look, I saw what you did, with oral fixation. I'm doing these shows. What are some of the things that I should look at? What are some of the things that I should understand? Or somebody has come to me and said they want me to host this open mic. What are the things that I'm going to do? I get, opportunities, offers to host open mics all the time. And there's a bullet point of things that I go through before I sign my name up for anything. I just need to understand what that is. And I think that a lot of times we're so anxious to just try to get something out there, or to be out there, or to be, like a new host. We don't understand. And if you don't understand those things before you start, you're putting yourself in a position to fail. And that's the one thing that I had to learn. I had my name attached to all of these open mics that lasted 2 months, right? That's 6 weeks. It was here today, gone tomorrow type of thing. And from a branding standpoint, that's not what you want to do. All money ain't good money.
I agree. Let's go back. When you first started, when did you first start writing?
Man, the first poem I ever wrote, I actually remember it. I was in the 4th grade.
Oh,
so it was a poem called Summer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that was the first poem I ever wrote. So 4th grade was when I first started writing. Been writing ever since.
And why did you start writing? Why did you write? Like, was it a project in school, or you just did it on your own?
Nah, like literally, like that poem, it's funny, and my sister doesn't know this, but my sister used to have a strawberry shortcake comforter. And on the comforter, it said, "A little work, but mostly play, all adds up to a very nice day." Like that was a line that was on the comforter. And so for some reason, I wrote this poem about summer and being out of school and, you know, all these other things. And I ended it, which was plagiarism, but I didn't know in fourth grade, but I ended it with that same line, right? It was just, and I was like, wow, that's really, like, I like, you know, writing and making things rhyme, and it was a challenge for me or whatever. And then it went from just doodling to writing poems to girls, trying to get them to like me, you know what I mean, or whatever. And I used to always challenge myself. Like, I used to write their name, like, you know, "I like you, do you like me?" Like, I would write that sentence down the column of the page, and then I would write the poem, right?
Oh,
and so when they read it, they had the poem, but then when they wrote it, it was a message. I was like, oh, that's so cute. The girls are gonna love me.
Yeah.
I was like, that's cute, but your pants too tight and you're wearing buddies, and that's what it was, right? But it started from that. So it started as just something I was doing. Then it started as something that I did to try to garner affection, and then it traversed into an outlet for pain and emotion and everything else, and then, you know, it transferred from there into the performance aspect of it. So
when you was writing these poems, did anybody else in your family write?
my little sister, so I used to write, and then my little sister used to write poems as well, and then she just stopped. She never pursued. She's still probably a good, she still is a good writer to this day, but she never took that step forward. But yeah, we both used to write.
Have you ever seen her get on stage?
Never. She never has.
You ever asked her, like, you gonna get on the stage?
All
right?
the time, man.
Right.
All the time. And it's funny because on my first album, I feel like it's almost something that works in the family.
Give us the name.
In my first album, my nephew.
What's the name of the album?
Evolution of Dichotomy. My nephew is on the album, and the first two albums I did them all by myself, right? I bought a Mac and a computer and GarageBand, a microphone, learned how to use it, did all of that. And he used to see me in there, like, every night, just, you know, recording and going back and forth. And I was the engineer and the performer and everything else. And he was like, you know, Uncle V, I can do spoken word. And I was like, man, don't be. He's like, no, for real, I can do spoken word. I was like, look, I'm in here working, quit playing, you know. He's like, no, for real, I can do spoken word. I said, okay, I'm gonna put you up to this mic, and if this is some garbage, you're going to bed. You're getting a whooping and you're going to bed.
Right.
So hit the record button. He did this freestyle about just his family and whatever, and the poem was like so dope. I put it on the album. Like it's a preface, a prelude to one of the poems that I did, and I was just like, you know, wow, the fact that off the top, off the cuff, he said these things, and it was insight into how he was feeling. Like, he had been living with me for all this time, and I had no idea that's how he was feeling. So yeah, I mean, I am a huge proponent. Anybody will tell you I'm a huge proponent of trying to get people to write and to express themselves. And I'm gonna keep referring to different poems. I have an album, The Other Side of the Story. There's a poem on the album called 7.1 millimeters. 7.1 millimeters, a lot of people don't understand the significance of that. But 7.1 millimeters is the distance between two blue lines on a college ruled sheet of paper. And what I realized, it's either 7.1 millimeters or 9/32 of an inch. And what I slowly started to realize was how powerful, you know, something can be in such a small space, right? You look at that 7.1 millimeters and you're like, man, you know, that is a very small amount of space. But depending on what you write in between there, it can have people willing to kill. It can have people willing to die. It can have people willing to do, you know, all of these other things. When I was a kid, I was enthralled with Martin Luther King and Adolf Hitler. And like my teachers used to think that I was crazy. And they were like, well, why do you have such a big infatuation with Adolf Hitler? I was like, it baffles me that here is this man, this small 5-foot-something man with brown hair and brown eyes, that is able to convince. He's not physically imposing by any stretch of the imagination,
right.
But he's willing to convince all of these people that blonde hair, blue-eyed is the perfect human, and have you willing to massacre millions of people, right? And it is simply by what he said. Like that was it. He wasn't a physical. He didn't beat people up. He didn't even look like what he said was the perfect specimen. And it amazed me. And I was like, wow. And then I looked at Martin Luther King. I'm like, man, this, based simply by what he said, he was able to get an entire city not to ride any public transportation for over a year. All black folks, right? We're not taking buses, we're not taking trolleys, we're not taking taxis, we're not doing anything, right? And simply because he was able to inspire and motivate people to do that, they're like, we're not doing any for over a year. Like, can you imagine us trying to do something like that now? It'd be impossible.
You couldn't even start watching football for you.
And so I was like, man, the spoken word is so extremely powerful. And that's why I have such a reverence for it. And that's what it led me into. It started off as just something that was doodling, and then I started to see the impact that I was able to have over people simply by what I chose to say to them. And I realized that it's twofold. One, I'm not always trying to get you to agree with me, right? A lot of people will fit the description, and they'll be like, you know what? It was all in your head. He's trying to make the area say, whatever the case may be. But what I've learned is it's not always about me trying to convince you or necessarily trying to get you to agree with me, but if I can evoke a thought or an emotion, if I can get you to start a conversation, then I've accomplished it. I'm not going to sit here and try to argue and make you think that police, don't do this or they do this or whatever the case may be. But if you're going to stop and think and just have the conversation, then I've accomplished what it is that I'm trying to accomplish.
Most definitely. When you said, earlier you said you was an introvert, right? Because you don't seem like when did you come out of your shell of being an introvert? Because are you still an introvert or something?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, I am what I deem it to be like socially awkward now, right? And so the fact that I am a dichotomy, there are so many. I couldn't have picked a better name, for myself. When I just think about my life, my thoughts, my beliefs, my experiences, all of those things. That is one of those things. Like I am a socially awkward person now. I can get on stage or I can be at a conference and I can present to thousands of people and I'm okay, right? But then after it's over, when they have the mixer, right, and you're now in this group of people and you're supposed to just walk up to somebody and start a conversation and talk about, like, those things give me anxiety. Those are areas where it's really kind of difficult for me, in that instance. So I'm still a shy, person in that sense.
But I'm just asking.
No,
but why?
We're here.
Like you understand? Like you bossed up. You got yourself out of Tennessee. You went to college. You finished that. You're a dope poet. You traveled off poetry. Like why? Why you can't just talk about the stuff you do?
Because
make me understand that. Cause I'm not like that.
Yeah.
But I want to understand.
Absolutely. Because after when you peel back all the layers, right? Mm-hmm. I'm still Vincent Maurice Hockett.
Right.
The young, country boy from Nashville who got teased about his clothes, who, wasn't a ladies' man, who wasn't popular in school, who didn't really have, a lot of friends, didn't do all of that, right? So during those formative years of my life, right, like that's how I operate. That was my safe space, right? So when you're out and all of these things are, people are at the school dance or whatever, my safe space to kind of be to myself. Then if someone comes and talks to me, right, like once you engage me and you say, and you give me that level of comfort, then it's like this, right? Then I'm wide open. You'd be like, oh, this dude is, whatever. But if the responsibility is on me to proactively come up and be like, hey man, I heard that you doing these interviews. I think I'd be a really good interview, for the shit wouldn't happen. You know what I mean? Regardless, even though I.
But you came to me and said you came to me at the show and said I did a good job.
I'm just saying, whether regardless of the resume, right? And so and the way that that's one thing that I wish. Or
maybe you came to me because poetry is your safe space, so it's okay in poetry.
I think what poetry allows. What poetry has afforded me the opportunity to do and to be is to take away a lot of that responsibility. You know what I'm saying? Because of what I have accomplished in poetry, it's not, I don't do a good job of networking when I go do it, whatever, right? But like you said, who Dichotomy is, or you have heard who Dichotomy is, right? So it's a whole lot easier in that instance to be like, okay, I know who you are, whatever the case may be, and for me to leverage that. versus me just being like, yo, I'm hungry. Like I just, you know what I mean? I want to do this or whatever, right? Like that's the difficult things, and those are kind of the things that I've gotten a lot better at them. But that's why, right? Like at the end of the day, I'm still that kid that, you know, people used to laugh at.
They used to pick on me too.
People used to do whatever. And hey man, we all, whatever the compelling event that needs to occur to get me out, it hadn't occurred yet.
All right, let me ask. This is because me and my wife and her brother, my brother-in-law, we was having this conversation about, because they say they introverts, right? And I challenged them. I said, "You're not an introvert." I said, "You're not an introvert." I said, "You just don't. You're an introvert to conversations is useless to you. A conversation is like meaningless. That's when you become an introvert." I say a conversation is intelligent, you have all the conversation in the world. It's the same way with a person who's not intelligent. If you put a person who's not intelligent around people who are intelligent, they become the introvert. Am I tripping?
I mean, I think that there are some aspects, you know, to that. But
Let me say that. Let me say before you go.
Yeah, go
This is
ahead.
what I'm trying to say. The people who was picking with you, they was picking with you because you was more intelligent than them, and they didn't know how to convey that, or they didn't know how to like. You understand? Like
that's possible.
Fuck you. Like when you think about it, your clothes don't make you, bro.
Yeah.
The way you dress, like you know, we know as an adults, but I was picked on when I was young.
Absolutely.
And all those people who was picking on me, they ain't like that now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think here's the point that you miss. I think here's the point that you miss in that, right?
Okay.
Is that being an introvert far supersedes just the conversational aspect of it, right? In order to be able to get to the point to where you recognize whether or not you want to have the conversation, whether you're intelligent or not, you have to first be engaged. And as an introvert, you're not even going to get to the point of the conversation first, right? Because you're already operating in this space. Like sometimes I'm amazed at how happy I am just to be by myself and not around people, or you know what I mean, whatever. A lot of poetry shows, I would go and be there by myself and talk with people that I knew and bounce, you know what I mean, after it was over, right? It was just a comfortable.
Because you like you.
Right.
You, that's fine.
Yeah, but being an introvert, right? Like I said, you have to, in order to understand what you want to have the conversation, you have to be in the conversation. You have to have it. You have to proactively go. And most people who are introverts, they don't feel comfortable, you know, in those spaces.
When the last time you had a moment that you felt like you was an introvert? And you noticed it, like, because it could have been yesterday, but when's the last time you was like, damn?
Yeah, I mean, I think for me, it's been several. Like really, any time that I go anywhere, right? So it's like, it can be an open, it can be an open mic. Like, hey, a business having this open mic at the man cave.
You know what?
You know what I mean, or whatever. So I'm gonna go, right? But when I go, I am there, and the only people you're ever gonna see me interact with is people who either come up to me or people that I already know, right? It's not.
I wonder how many people be like, this motherfucker, the economy, a funny ass type ass dude.
A lot of people have. A lot of people have, and that's what I'm saying. Like it comes across as being, it's like you feel like you're stuck up or above anybody, and it's not.
I don't think you like that.
No, I'm just saying. Like I've heard that in the past, or they'd be like, yo, this dude is kind of.
You know what's funny? Now that you broke it down, I do notice, like, if I'm somewhere, you will be there, but you be in a corner. You won't even notice you there until they call you up. You do that. Like, you be somewhere, and you damn near, like,
Sure.
you like you know, the DJ Frizz? Yeah. You like Frizz, like, you don't know that he there unless you actually see him or somebody call him up.
Yeah.
That's how you are in most spots.
Yeah.
And is that part of it, you think?
Oh, absolutely. Because the irony, again, everything is like this contradiction. Everything is like this dichotomy, right? Because the irony is that I don't like drawing a lot of attention to myself. I don't like a lot of attention in general. Like, there's a lot of people that bust in the door and they're like, hey, they want to speak to everybody that they see and like, hey, what's going on? Like, not me. I'm like, come in. You know what I'm saying? If I sign my name on the list, I'm gonna sit at the bar and I'm gonna chill. Call me up, I'm gonna do my thing, and some people are gonna talk to me, you know what I mean, or whatever.
And even times when you come to the spot, when you come to Cats, and you be like, yeah, I just came to smoke. I'm like, yo, you going up? Yo, if you got, I'm like, Dichotomy, if you want to go up, hell, you can go up.
You know what I'm saying? I will tell you, one of the things that I've really just tried to remain humble. There's a lot of things that I really want to do that I haven't done yet. A lot of things I've seen a lot of other people do, but I know that I've accomplished a lot as well. But I keep thinking back to how when I came up, right? Like I think back to that moment when I went to the first time that I went to Apache, and as a host at Apache, I got it. Like I understand if a Georgia me or Queen Sheba comes in the building, you don't have them wait to the end of the night. You don't do all that. Like I got all that, but I also, by the same token, remember being so excited to perform at Apache, being like, just waiting till that Sunday came and getting there early and signing my name on the list at 8 and 9 o'clock going by and 10 o'clock going by and 10:30 and 11 o'clock and people started to leave and they felt like I remember that experience. So like when I come to an open mic now and like, somebody come to me and be like, yo, you want to get up? I'm like, hey, I don't mind, getting up if you got room. Like I take that aspect because if it's going to mean that somebody who was on the list who doesn't get to perform or they're gonna have to wait, extra long just for me to come and do a poem, I'm not on no superstar Hollywood shit.
Most definitely. Yeah, but the way I look at it when certain people come through, I'm like, bro, I'm out here, so I know what it takes to get your shit hot. So in my mind, it's like, if you've been hot before I even came here, you deserve to go up whenever. That's how I look at it. You deserve to go whenever you want to go up. That's how I be looking at it.
But here's the deal. You're absolutely right. But what I'm saying is there's a difference between allowing the host to have that discretion. Yeah. Right? There's and
you coming in there like it's yours. Like right, you coming in like, yo.
Yeah, like, hey,
I'm going up at 5.
I'm only here. I only got 30 minutes, dog. Let me get on. You know what I mean? Or whatever. I got somewhere else to go. Just came through, you know what I mean, and whatever. Now as a host, if you're like, my show is better, or I think these people need to hear from this artist or whatever, like you make that decision, but I will never come into a spot, and there's been, quite frankly, there's been some spots where I, even felt like or thought, hey man, you need to go ahead and put me, and they did, you know what I mean? And ain't no qualms, like I don't feel any kind of way about it, but that's the big thing, man. I really just try to remain like humble and kind of in that space, because I remember being on the other side. Yeah,
that's on the other side. It's a hell of a place to be when you just sitting there waiting. But the thing is, for me, it's like, I know how much money it takes to do the open mics. I know how much time it takes. I know how much gas, how much energy, how much missing family or friends it takes to get yourself. So in my mind, when certain people come through, I'm like, yo, I'm gonna put you. When you want to go up, you let me know when you want to go, because I respect everybody that been here before me, and I respect whether you come from somewhere else. I respect you, yo, and I also respect the people who nobody know yet, because they might be like. This is the thing I think some people don't understand. Just because you the shit, it could be somebody that's way better, take it way farther than all of us. Like, I didn't know about that guy Brandon until recently. I never knew about him until recently. But it's a possibility that he might have been at an open mic at one time, trying to go on a list, and somebody was like, you're going to have to wait to the end. Yeah. You got to make sure you treat everybody kind of fairly if you can.
And the interesting thing is, and that's why I'm just like, as an artist, you got to put in the work. Because my job has me traveling to a bunch of different cities, you know what I mean? And in Atlanta, in Nashville, parts of Florida where I travel a lot, like most people know who Dichotomy is and heard of him in some way or another, right? When first time I went out to Dallas, I went to Houston or Austin or, anywhere else, they didn't know who I was, you know what I mean? From that standpoint, so like none of that mattered. I was just another dude that was on the list who was trying to sign up, you know what I mean, and perform it. And that allowed me to really kind of stay humble, because for as much as I think I've done, as much as I think people should know who I am, you know what I mean? Some of these people are like, yo, you gonna sign your name on the list and wait just like everybody else? And I'm like, yes, sir. Like, got it. I'll wait my turn.
Bro, I was at Busboy and Poets in D.C., I think it was a year ago, last year, and I was like, yo, my milk, I'm from Atlanta. I said, put me up. I'm one of the ones. Bring me up. And time flying, and I'm like, damn, I'm not used to this though. I'm not used. So I'm all right, cool. But I said, I'm a buy this shit when I go up. I'm a fucking, cause based on the level of challenge going up there, you know if it's a night like, oh, it's over. I get up there, and towards the end, time is going out. So if you're not dope, he cut you off. He cut you off in the middle of your phone. So I'm like, oh, okay. I go up there. I body it. Everybody clapping and yo, bring him. Like I'm going off stage. They're like, bring him back, bring him back. So I go back there again, body it again. They're like, yo, I need it. Like they need to be a feature. And then the dude came down and was like, yo, we had to make you a feature. And that shit feel good when you go somewhere that nobody know. I like going places that nobody know me more than people that know me.
Yeah.
Because the people that know you is almost, it's damn near cheat code because they know you're going to kill it. You can damn near do anything at this time because they know it's you. But when you go somewhere and you prove yourself again to new people who don't know you, whether it's a new venue, a different state, a different country, that's beautiful to me.
Right, and that's, you know,
that's high.
It's very fulfilling, right? Because like I said, first time I went to Busboys and Poets, I reached out to Too Deep, and she made me go through all that stuff. Went and did the feature. The feature was cool. You know, we kept in touch or whatever. Probably 3 years later, I'm in DC on a humble, right? Just there for work or something. I'm like, yo, I'm gonna go to Busboys and Poet. So I go to Busboys and Poet, and she happens to be the host that night. She's like, oh, Dichotomy, you're here. She's like, you know what? I don't have a feature tonight. You're the feature. Like I just showed up, and I went just from going and listening to poetry, sign up on open mic list to being the feature, and it came from, you know, setting my ego aside and being like, you want me? You know what I'm doing in Atlanta? You want me to see you some YouTube links?
You know who I am.
You want to ask somebody about me? I ain't doing but you know, set the ego aside, do all of that. I did have a good feature, you know what I'm saying? And like I said, and you develop those relationships and those opportunities to kind of come from that, man.
To me, from my perspective, I don't think I'll never have an ego like that because there's so many dope motherfuckers here. It's like you can't. Like if you have an ego when you see all this dope shit, to me you damn near stupid. It's too many dope. It's like a lot.
Yeah,
it's a lot of dope motherfuckers here, bro.
And I think that there's a balance, right? Because I feel like that there are certain people who should have an ego, right? Mm-hmm. Because they should demand a certain level of respect. You know what I mean? You take somebody like Georgia Me as a Peabody, an Emmy, been on Broadway, you're like, oh, like she should have an ego. And anybody who doesn't respect that or her, anything that she's done like that's really kind of on them. So I think that there's a balance. And I think that as a poet, shit, man, you gotta have an ego. To stand up in front of a bunch of people that you don't know and to express some of your deepest, darkest, there's an ego and a confidence that you have to have.
I'm talking about the ego towards other poets. I can't have that. It's too many dope motherfuckers here.
I get you.
You know what I mean? It's too many people to say, I've seen Ed Mabry, I've seen Teresa Somber, I've seen, when you saw CNL, you like, yo, these some dope motherfuckers.
Yeah.
I have an ego. And it's all these killers and aliens and dope motherfuckers here.
It keeps you humble.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It definitely keeps you humble.
Georgia Me, Abyss.
Yeah.
It's I could probably do the whole interview just naming dope motherfuckers I've seen.
Yeah,
back to back.
Absolutely. And I think it's an interesting thing there because like me, myself, I try to remain humble, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't desire the approval of those folks that of those people that I looked up to, right? Those people that did have that. And I think that's one of the things that keeps me and has kept me humble, right? Even though I have gone on to do some of those things that those people have not. By the same token, when I look at what they've accomplished, what they've done for the art form, what they've done for me, just in making me better, right? I think that's one of the things that's always going to kind of keep me in a very humble, very humble place.
I agree. How did you come up with your poet name? And did you have a different name before this?
Absolutely.
Okay, good.
I think I don't know. Maybe I'm one of the few people. I think.
First of all, I like your fucking name. I wish that was when she said your name Dichotomy, I was like, fuck, I like that fucking name, man.
Yeah, it goes back from my nerdy days, man. Like when I was in school, when I was growing up, I used to always want to expand my vocabulary. So whenever I would hear a word either on TV or read it in a magazine or somebody say it in conversation that I didn't know, or a movie, I would always go look it up and try to figure out what it was, and that helped me to expand my vocabulary. And what I really tried to do was I tried to learn it in a manner that using it became innate. Because I think a lot of times when somebody learns a new word, they try to guide sentences in a way that allows them to use that word, right? They're like, I learned this new word, right? I learned this new word, so I'm gonna try to figure out where in the sentence I can use that word.
Right.
But what I wanted to do was I wanted to learn all these words and make it become innate. And dichotomy was one of those words. When I first started doing poetry, my poetry name was Poetic Vernacular. Like that's what it was. And the reason was because, when I was in the 5th grade, my French teacher, Mrs. Hibbett, said, you know what, when you grow up, you should either be a preacher or a politician. Because she's like, the manner in which you speak, it is so fluid and it is so poetic, right? It just kind of flows, in that manner. Mm-hmm. And so one of the new words that I had learned was vernacular. So I understood what vernacular was. She was like, oh, she said I speak in a poetic stance. So I took poetic, and the new word I learned vernacular, and it was poetic vernacular. So if anybody knows, when I first started doing poetry in Nashville, I went by poetic vernacular. It took me all about a year of being poetic vernacular to have people talk about the name, mispronounce the name. It's way too many syllables. The shit was just, it was garbage, right? And so I had heard the word, dichotomy. And so, in case you don't know, the definition of dichotomy is two contradicting things that exist in a singular space, right? And we all have different dichotomies about ourselves. And so as I started to look at myself and my writing, there were all of these synergies that were there. So I'm a Pisces. The symbol of a Pisces is 2 fish swimming in the opposite direction. Mm-hmm. My government name is Vincent Maurice. I was named after my mother's 2 brothers. My Uncle Vincent is a preacher. My Uncle Maurice was a thug, for lack of a better word, right? So there were those contradictions, that were there. And so I was like, man, as I look into this, I grew up in the inner city, a product of the welfare system, right? I now have secular success that puts me in a tax bracket that is like, hey man, I get, the democratic way of life and all of that. However, I really need these tax brackets or whatever. So they were all, whether it's life, love, and I just started to see all of these perceived contradictions, in my life, and the synergies with being a Pisces in my name. And I was like, man, this shit just makes sense. And so I adopted the name Dichotomy, and it just been riding with it ever since.
So you was writing when you was back home, and you said about at 4 you started writing.
Yeah.
So when was the first time you got a feature? Was it here or was it in Tennessee?
No, actually, the first time I got a feature was in Tampa, Florida.
Oh, okay.
Which seems really, really odd. But just to kind of go through the story, when I first started doing poetry, I was going to open mics in Nashville. And there was a coffee house called Kajiji's. It was Kajiji's Coffee House that was there. A lot of people, dope people in Nashville. I know they'll probably never look at this video, but like Logic in the Third Person, Afro Pick, who's a dope poet and rapper, Aubrey the poet. There's just a bunch of people that were there doing their thing. And I started doing the open mics there. And that was when somebody heard me one time. They was like, man, that poem is really, really dope. You should continue to perform. So I was like, oh, that shit is cool. And then that's when I was like, I thought I was big shit. And I went to Apache, and performed. I'll never forget. I was doing, not to segue, but I was doing the poem.
Good.
The poem was called, was called My Spoken Word. And the poem is about being in a relationship with a woman, but not wanting to be with her. Like you just don't want anybody else to have her, so you just kind of stick around. So I think the first mistake was I did that poem in Atlanta, full of women who have experienced that. They're just like, they damn sure don't want to hear that from a dude. Right. But that was the first thing. And so I'm doing the poem, and I'm getting to the end, and I'm struggling because I realized at that point that there's a difference between performing and reciting. Right, and at that point, I was reciting the poem because I'm more concerned about what the next line is versus, being so comfortable in it that you can skip around or do whatever.
You can play with it.
Right, and so I got to the end of the poem, and I'm like, I have a confession to make. I think that love is a blessing you fake instead of one you create. And I couldn't remember the next line. And then a lady in the crowd yells out, and now you got to go home and masturbate. Right, and then everybody starts laughing. You know what I mean? Whatever. And I was shook. Like at that, I couldn't recover.
Right.
I just said thank you, and I got off, and I never went to Apache again. Right. But I say all that to say, I didn't let that moment define me. But what I did do was I went back to Nashville.
Was that girl a poet?
What's that?
Looking back, was she a poet or just an audience?
It was just an audience member.
Okay,
you know what I mean?
okay.
And it's crazy because Corey Whitehead, who obviously is there painting, he remembers that night. Like he was there, that night. But one that shook me from doing poetry. And like I said, I never went to Apache for 3 years after that. But I went back to Nashville and I was like, I'm not going to let this define me. I continue to write and perform there and get better. And so now I am working for, I'm working in corporate America, and they are having me go to different cities for work. And what I decided to do was to say, okay, well, since you're going to send me to these cities, I'm going to find an open mic. I'm going to find an open mic that's there, because now other people who would never hear me or know who I am now have access and have the ability to be able to listen, to hear me or do whatever. And so I would go to Tampa all the time. And there was an open mic there called Black on Black Rhyme. Anybody that knows, there's a Black on Black Rhyme Atlanta, there's a Black on Black Rhyme Tampa, hell, there's one in Dubai, right now. But it was Black on Black Rhyme. At that time, it was hosted by a guy named Life Malcolm. And so I would go there every single Tuesday that I was in town. I would hit the open mic or whatever. And Life was just like, hey man, you here, I see you doing your thing. Like, you actually, I'm feeling some of your shit. Like no bullshit. I really think that you dope enough to do a feature. And he gave me my first feature, which is crazy because I'm from Nashville, lived in Atlanta, did all these things. My first poetry feature came from Tampa, and as a result, when I subsequently did an album, my album release was done in Tampa. Like I did it, at Black on Black Rhyme, for Life, for that reason. So
That's
that was the first feature I ever got was nowhere that I performed. So it was nowhere near my home base, but it was in Tampa, Florida.
Let me ask you this: when was the first time you got on stage, right?